Welcome back to the Fit Minute Podcast, where we talk all things health, fitness, and lifestyle. I hope you enjoy the show. Welcome back. I'm your host, Gabby Mazar, and on today's episode, I have Dr. Karthik Ramanan. He goes by Dr. K. Welcome to the show today. He is a naturopathic physician and an emotional health mentor, and we're going to jump right in. And Dr. K, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Absolutely. Gabby, I'm really excited to be on the show today. Well, this might be a easier way to explain what I do is to explain why I do it. So rewind about 11 years at this point, and I was in a unique spot in life. I remember distinctly standing at the window of my studio apartment in downtown Jersey City overlooking the New Jersey horizon. I was working on Wall Street at the time, and I had this whole place to myself for the first time in my life, lived by myself. I had paid off my student loans, my parents' credit card debt. I'd given more to charity than I ever thought I could at that age. And I had worked really hard to get to that moment. I was the fastest to be promoted to the level that I was at in my department, and everything was going in my favor, except I hated the man in the mirror. And I didn't understand how I could do all the things that society says you need to do in order to be successful and happy. And yet I wasn't. And yet I was still struggling to really come to terms with who I was. I didn't know what that was. And so I would go to work, I'd put on my figurative mask, so to speak, and I would be the high performer that everybody knew that I was. However, inside, nobody knew the struggle that was going on, this disconnect between who I was, the life I was living, and the truth of who I was. And I didn't know who that person was at the time. And so it was at a time when dating wasn't going so well, and I was really starting to question my self-worth at an even deeper level. I was already very self-critical to begin with, but at a certain point, you get to a rock bottom. And for anyone that's listening that might be at that place or close to that place, I will say this: rock bottom can be one of two things. It can be a place where you stay, or it can be the best thing that ever happened to you. And I've been in that spot a couple times, and whenever that's happened, the launch pad has been remarkable. So what happened at that time was I was also significantly overweight. I was looking at my career going, I'm not sure I want to continue. I was already about 6 to 7 years in, and I didn't know what my calling was. I didn't know any of those things. I hit rock bottom. I didn't know where I was going in life, and nobody knew that I was suffering in silence. And so around that time, I saw my sister after a 3-month window of time, my younger sister. And so she had come back from her spring break to visit my parents. So I went upstate to see everybody. And in the 3 months since I had seen her, she had lost 30 pounds. Her cystic acne had cleared up. She looked absolutely incredible. And her energy, her confidence, like everything about her had shifted dramatically in just 3 months. And before I even asked her the question of what she did, I knew that I was just at that moment where I was willing to do anything. That's what rock bottom affords you. It's your willingness to say yes and try things that you wouldn't have been willing to do otherwise. So I asked her, what did you do? You look incredible. And she goes, oh, I've just been eating a whole food plant-based diet, mostly raw foods. I was like, okay, I don't know what that means. Tell me what that means. I've just been eating fresh fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds, just as they're found from the earth. I said, okay, all right, whatever. Show me how to do this, right? Because when I saw her succeed, I knew, okay, we're genetically similar. So if it worked for you, it'll work for me. So I just embarked on, instead of going wholesale changes, which I had in the past, I'd done, okay, you know what? I'm starting P90X today. Oh, I'm starting Insanity today. And I would, or I'm giving up gluten today, or I'm giving up processed foods. And I would always do this and then get some degree of success and then plateau and get frustrated and go back. And just give up. And what I realized was that all or nothing mentality, later on I realized, was is a means that we use to self-sabotage. This time, I don't know where it came from, but I had the wisdom to just say, you know what, I'm just gonna gradually lean into this and just see what happens. So I just slowly changed one meal a day to all plants and saw what happened. And I said, okay, I'm starting to feel a little bit better, I guess. And the second week, I said, okay, I'm feeling a lot better. Why don't I give myself 2 cheat meals, which now I really don't like that term, but that's what I called it back then. And both of those times that happened, I felt like crap. And so the third week, I said, oh, you know what, I'm just going to go all in, and I felt great. And 3 weeks later, that was the other thing I used to do. I used to step on the scale every day just to make myself feel bad, pretty much. And so,
Yeah.
but I didn't step on the scale at all during that time. And I noticed my clothes were changing. So I said, I got to do it. I stepped on the scale after 3 weeks. I was at the lowest weight I'd ever been as an adult. And that's when my mind blew open. And I said, wait a second, maybe the life that I wanted, the body that I wanted, the confidence that I wanted, maybe the relationship, all that stuff. What if the only thing holding me back from all that all this time was me? It was the belief that I could never do it, even though I kept trying and working hard. But if you don't believe first, the actions never truly follow. And so that opened my eyes to the possibility of, whoa, okay, I don't know what I can become, but I'm just going to enjoy this ride. And so true to myself, I never told anybody at work what I was doing or let people into my personal life. And so, but I'd bring my jars of green juice to the office, and I'd get the questions every so often, like, what is that you're drinking? You know, and I'd explain what it was. And then people would notice, okay, he's losing weight, whatever. And the same guys that would kind of poke fun at me later would pull me aside and say, hey, got this wedding I'm going to in a couple weeks. Do you have any advice? I can't get in my suit, just a little too tight. And so, yeah, people lost weight, but I saw type 2 diabetes go away, hypertension, chronic migraines. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing, but this is incredible. The fulfillment I felt from seeing their gratitude was just like, I got to do this for a living. I got to figure out what this is. And so I did some more research, and I started realizing, okay, we've got an incredible medical system for a lot of things. However, the thought process is somewhat akin to, do I have a headache because of the lack of Advil in my system? So what am I doing fundamentally with my body and mind that has deviated us from our natural state of things that allows us to function the way we were designed to function? And so I realized the importance of, real food, the importance of moving our body, the importance of sleep, and all of these things. And in the process, I said, okay, well, how do I make this my career? So I found out about naturopathic medicine. I moved to Arizona about 10 years ago now, and I gave up my old career. And in the process, I thought, you know what? This is a chance to reinvent who I am. I'm going to a place where nobody knows me. If there was ever a chance to reinvent who I was to myself and to the world around me, this was it. And so I took out a sheet of paper on the plane over here, and I said, what does Dr. K, the future, look like? The guy that I'm trying to build, what are his habits, routines, mentalities? Who does he spend time with? What's his morning rituals? What does he eat? What does he not eat? Who does he spend time with? Who does he not spend time with? What books does he read? Does he read? I didn't used to read books. I got an Audible subscription, right? And I started doing the things that the ideal future version of me would do. And in doing so, I moved closer and closer into that person. And as I went through medical school and I started working with patients, I realized, we can come up with a lifestyle-oriented treatment plan for, let's say, type 2 diabetes for somebody. When they come back a month later, they haven't done anything. They haven't changed anything. I realized, okay, you know what? Healing starts and ends up here, just like it did for me. And so I had this passion of diving deeper into emotional health from a different perspective, right? Because we have the counseling, the psychotherapy side, incredibly valuable in certain respects for certain people. And I think everybody can benefit. There's the psychiatry side where the pharmaceutical interventions can be incredibly appropriate and helpful for certain people in certain circumstances. But what I felt was missing was this concept of, if I have a plant that's dying, right? Let's say this plant back here is not doing so well, right? If
Don't look at my plant.
Right. So if I were to ask you, Gabby, all right, help me. Okay, maybe you're not the person to ask, but if I were to ask, what does that plant need to thrive? We'd say, okay, maybe we could change its location, get close to the window, could change the soil, any other nutrients that might be missing, fill in the blanks, right? Water. And yet, why don't we think that way for us as human beings? What do we need to be emotionally healthy? And so I came up with this 5-pillar concept of emotional health, which is the foundation of what I teach today. And it's number one, your psychology, your belief systems about yourself, the lens through which you see the world. It's largely some of the things that we address through therapy. History of trauma goes in there, but also your emotional intelligence, your ability to understand why we think, act, and feel a certain way at certain times, and understanding what our triggers are, understanding how to self-regulate when we are triggered, those things. Number two, your relationships. We've heard we're the average of the 5 people and ideas that we spend the most time with, and it's very true. Your environment is the greatest source of shifting not only your belief patterns, but the actions that you take. We adapt to our surroundings. We adapt to the people around us. So one of the easiest ways, when you're talking about getting fit and healthy, this is why I think it's so important because I used to go about my fitness journey alone, right? I didn't want to go to the gym or hire a trainer, even though I absolutely could have. I didn't want to because I felt so ashamed. So I wanted to work out at home. And yes, it was helpful to me in some respects, but at the same time, it was lacking, specific direction for my needs, but also it was lacking community. It was lacking people to grow with, because when you're around that energy and you're around that mentality, it becomes so much easier, because the reality is that that's not most people. You have to seek out growth-seeking individuals. And so that's really powerful. Number 3, nutrition, right? This was my journey to emotional health, was through optimizing my gut microbiome. And so this was something that, I didn't understand how, okay, listen, there was one day I was feeling down, right? Just because it happens, right? Or this pendulum swing. And I said, instead of sitting in this suffering, I'm going to go make myself a green juice. And I kid you not, the first sip that I had, I could almost feel this. It wasn't a physical tingling sensation, but it was akin to that, in terms of almost feeling like I was waking up, and it just enlivened me, helped me feel alive again. And in that moment, that was all that was needed. And what I realized, through consistent nutrition change and my journey of losing 100 pounds and everything else that went into it, was that the emotional side is the part that just rarely gets talked about. That when you are what you eat, and if your thoughts are such a big part of who you are, then or this aspect of living, then we have to optimize how we eat to feel better. But then when you dive into the science of it, 90 to 95% of our neurotransmitters come from our gut, and they're not made by us. They're made by the bacteria that live in our gut. And so instead of thinking about, okay, this nutrient is good for this purpose in the body, feed the guys that are making your body thrive. And it's not just your emotional health. It's your immune function. It's your hormone balance. It's your metabolic function. And we're just starting to find everything that goes on through the compounds like the short chain fatty acids, the butyrates, et cetera, that these gut microbes are producing for us, and how they influence various aspects of our body through almost acting like hormones. And so nutrition is number 3. Number 4, sleep. It was the first thing to go for me anytime I was busy. It's the first thing to go for people, I think, that are high achieving, hustle, grind, that kind of thing. But the reality is that, our brain health is vital. Like, sleep is vital to our brain health. It's when our brain heals, regenerates, detoxifies. It's when we process the day's events, commit things to long-term memory. And we've all felt when we're short on sleep, our emotional resilience is not strong, right? And so that's just one example, but sleep is a vital component. High quality, deep, enough sleep is vital for us to thrive with our emotional health. And number 5, body movement. Motion dictates emotion. We got a whole podcast on motion and staying fit. So obviously we've all felt when we move our body, we feel better, right? And it's not just the short-term effects, it's the long-term effects too. Constant low-grade motion in addition to the exercise is vital for our emotional health. And so the long answer to what I do is through the story there. But I help high achieving individuals and companies optimize their emotional health and ultimately move past burnout and live the life that they've wanted to live.
Yeah. That's a lot. But I love that you touch on all those things because they're all so important. One of the things I wanted to kind of point out, you did touch on gut health, and I think it is so important that we're finding out so much about it recently that um, it connects so much to our emotions as well. It's our immune system, it's our emotions, it's so much in our body that we never really realized. But the nutrition aspect as well, a lot of times people use food as a punishment also, or use the scale as a punishment.
Mhm.
And those things, we don't realize that we're doing that either. So you're kind of trying to point out things that you're using, you have triggers and um you have these emotions, you have these feelings, and then you step on the scale and
Right.
then you go eat a pack of Oreos or whatever it is, and then you're punishing yourself for certain things. So you're you're pointing out, or that you're touching on all of these separate points and separate things that need to be touched on is very, very important because they all come together to make a well-rounded person as well. So I think that's really, really great. But as a health mentor and with your program, how does that work? How does it work when you work with an individual or when you work with a company?
Yeah. So it's there's three general ways that I work with people. One-on-one. It's a mentorship, health, emotional health mentorship mastery program. Number two is through group workshops. So actually, right now I'm doing one called Good Mood Plant Food: how to utilize more whole plants in your diet to give you the fiber that is the precursor to a lot of these short chain fatty acids that your gut microbes need. But it's not just the, okay, why is it important from the science standpoint, but uh, the practical aspects. But even before that, I think the part that rarely gets talked about is what is the emotional connection to food. This idea that of we are what we eat, and we're so tied to our memories. I had a conversation in that class recently, a gentleman that his biggest food addiction, so to speak, is um, big chunky chocolate chip cookies and milk, right? And as we talked about it, so why is that important to you? What does that remind you of? And he just went back to his childhood. And the gentleman's like 70 years old now, right? But it goes all the way back to his childhood and how his mom used to make those. And it just, it brings him back. It brings him that joy. And so we can, if we can understand what our payoffs are from our food, we can get those payoffs in other ways and then use food as a fuel instead of punishment, instead of reward, allowing food to not be the social lubricant as well. I mean, just think about it. How many meetings do we go to, or dates or anything else, right? Where food, the parties, right? Food
All of
has
them.
to be there. All of them. It is the social lubricant. And yet, um, and so that influences how we see food. But the reality is that if we can start to understand what our belief systems are about ourselves and what are the things that we do to make some of those negative belief systems true. So for instance, for me, I believed that I was just an unfit person, that I would never be healthy. And so in doing so, it gives you a mechanism to self-sabotage through food. You can either punish yourself, like, oh, you're a, fill in the blank, and eat something that's not helping you, or use it as celebration. Hey, I did well today. I'm going to treat myself to such and such. But in the end, some of those foods, they either move you away from the person you want to be or move you toward the person you want to be. So the way that I teach people to think about food is every piece of food you eat is a vote toward the person that you want to be, which direction you want to go. It's just a choice. So anyway, that's the group workshops. I have that. We have a relationships one that I teach with my wife called Loving Me, Loving You. My favorite one, and self-criticism, so personal to me. How do we stop the negative voice in our head, start becoming our own best friend, not our own harshest critic, and others throughout the year. So I have that Insiders Club where we have a community of growth seekers where we spend that time together in the courses and also support ourselves outside of it. And then at a company level, it includes some of the above too. So all the employees get access to the courses. And I work closely with the ownership, the leadership, and do group workshops or live streams, depending on where they're located, for the teams, because fundamentally, emotionally healthy employees are happy employees, and happy employees are productive employees who enjoy going to work, like ultimately, when you can work at a place where you feel like you're not only just growing in your career, but you're growing as a person, it makes sense for everybody. They're happier. The company's better off because
they
you're not
work
spending
better
as much
together.
Yeah, they work better together. There's less drama. Management can go back to managing strategy and everything else and not putting out personal fires. And so it just becomes a much better experience overall. So one-on-one, group, and with companies.
Can we go back to the self-criticism?
Yeah.
I love that. I think every person on earth does that. I think that's so huge. No matter what, no matter if I think especially now with as huge as social media is and as much technology as we have, we can see so much. And we may look at other people and think, wow, that person is perfect, or wow, look at them. But even that person on the other side of the lens, they criticize something about themselves as well. And that's a really, really big one, because being perfect and being what we might think is perfect, or having this ideal image of what we should be, is, I think, bigger than ever now. So kind of changing that mindset, or changing that ideal and that emotion connected behind that is a big deal. So can you touch a little bit more on that, and what that workshop does and how you help people through that?
Yeah, absolutely. So none of us are born being self-critical.
Because we're cute
And
little fat babies.
right. So if anybody's watched a baby learn how to walk, what does that look like?
They fall and they get back up.
Right. They fall, they get back up, they fall, they get back up. It's not pretty. And eventually they walk a couple steps and then continue to fall. And eventually they walk. And so, but when think about us as adults, how many times have we picked up something new, right? Maybe it was a hobby that we always wanted to try, new language we wanted to learn, maybe a project at work, or going out on the first date in a long time, whatever it is for us, right? And we expect it to go perfectly. We expect ourselves to perform perfectly. And when we don't, the first time we say, well, this is not for me. I guess not. Right. And so what does that tell us? If we had that adult mentality when we were kids, when we were babies, none of us would be walking. Right.
We'd all be on our bellies.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if anybody would have been able to invent like a wheelchair or something at that point if we were all on our belly. I don't know. Anyway, alternate universe. So we somewhere along the way learned that. And for everybody, it's a little bit different. And so one of the things that I do in that course, and I will say that for certain people, and this is where it's really important to understand, with my background as a naturopathic physician and working really closely with counselors and therapists, with psychiatry as well, is understanding when somebody needs which route, right? There's certain individuals, if they've been through specific types of trauma, especially having something powerful like EMDR is really the way to go first. And the way that I look at what I bring to the table is afterward, when you have some of those specific things addressed, now let's set the table for emotional health. And so with respect to self-criticism, when we can understand how did we start developing that belief system, right? What happened in our childhood that allowed us to cope the best way that we could at the time with our minds at the time, that are really simple things. And a lot of them stem from, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for my parents. Maybe we got, something happened that we made that decision for ourselves. It could have been a divorce, could have been a, witnessing an argument, could have been whatever it was. And that's the way that we coped with it. And then later, as we grew up, maybe there was bullying. It wasn't my case for sure. I'm just relaying, a couple things I've also been through as well. And so high school, let's say, we got dumped or rejected. Maybe we go to college and maybe some of those stories continue, or our first job, maybe we lose a job, right? And all of these things start to stack on each other and say, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. And the truth is that as we start to see ourselves that way, we in some ways make those situations true by putting ourselves in situations that allow them to be true. For instance, with me, okay, I'm not good enough to be, fit and healthy. I'm going to do P90X
and kill myself. Try
Yeah,
and kill
which was
myself to
great,
get where I want to
but
be. But
I had to then be like, okay, now that I finished the 90 days and I started regaining weight, now I got to do it again. And I didn't know how to like properly set myself up. Nothing against P90X. I think it
no,
was
nothing at all.
phenomenal for
Yes.
what it was at the time. Like it was the kickstart that I needed. I don't think if I didn't have that, I wouldn't have believed that I could take even the next step, right?
Sure.
So it's the thing is that it all needs to come together. So with self-criticism, when we can look at where do we come from and understand that who we are now is largely a reflection of the past, but we can just as powerfully create a vision of our future self and live into that vision, something that honors our past, the superpowers that we have gained from our past, which almost always come from pain, and then use that to leverage the best version of us to create the future. And so it's just a different way of thinking about who we are, rather than, because essentially it's almost like, imagine if you had walked around your whole life with sunglasses on. You would have thought the world is dim, not so colorful, and sure, it might be helpful in bright sunlight, but it's not great in all situations. And then one day you take the sunglasses off and you can see clearly for the first time in your life. That's what it's like. It's the lens through which you see the world, the lens of self-criticism. Once that gets removed, now the language in your head stops being, I'm a failure, or, oh, I'm such an idiot, to, I feel like a failure right now, but that's okay. Or not, I'm an idiot, but, oh, I made a mistake. All right, how do I fix this? How can I learn from this? It's a very different way of going about it, because the language that identifies ourselves as a failure, not good enough, etc., versus just separating facts from feelings and saying, okay, yeah, I did this, didn't work out. What can I learn? Let's move forward. It just unlocks everything in your life.
Yeah,
whatever route you take or want to do, whether it's the fitness, whether it's your career, whether it's personal life, everything improves when you stop getting in your own way.
Absolutely, for sure. I think we're all a little bit in our own way. I think we all kind of have a little self-doubt. Everybody has a little self-doubt, and we all have a little bit of fear of change and a little bit of fear of trying something new, because we're afraid to fail. And failure is okay because it shows us how to do something better, or how to do something different. Maybe you can't do it this way, so try a different way, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's absolutely okay to do something incorrectly to learn how to do it the correct way. Just like you said, just learning how to walk, okay? You do it once. And I mean, the saying goes, it's the first time you do something is the worst time you do something. You're never going to do it that way again.
Right.
You're going to do it better the next time, and better the next time, and better the next time. It's like playing sports, or learning to play an instrument or whatever you do, every single time you do it, you're going to get better at it. So just keep going and keep trying. So you don't just work with people here in, Phoenix, Tempe area. You work with people all over, correct?
That's right. Yeah, I do have an office here for anyone local. We can work one-on-one here at the office, but I also see a lot of folks on Zoom. That was prior to the pandemic too, so I was all set up, ready to go, and then got back in person. But also, I'm able to see people anywhere, and so it's to me, this is about, like, this is my purpose, right? To be able to help people get out of their own way to find theirs and live in theirs and live fulfilling lives. And I think with my background, understanding that sometimes checking the boxes doesn't actually get you to where you want to be. And when you live in a vision of what you think other people expect of you versus living the life that you want to design for yourself, it's a totally different way of being that makes life so much more fulfilling.
Yeah, I agree. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, anybody personally or any companies want to get a hold of you to work with them personally or work with their employees, how can they do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So for to find me on social media, you can search Dr. Karthik Ramanan. I'm on YouTube, on Instagram, and TikTok, and all the main platforms. And then, as far as if you want to join any of my online workshops, the best way is to go to my website, drkarthikramanan.com, or you can go shortcut. You can go to joininsidersclub.com, and that's the quickest way to get access to all my courses. So for instance, right now, we finished up Supporting Self, which is 8 weeks to put all the 5 pillars of emotional health together, ended at the end of last year. So if you see that course and you're like, yeah, that's really cool, I want to do, well, I'm not doing that as a live course until this end of this year. However, if you wanted to jump in, Insiders members can do any course at any time. We have office hours. You can come ask your questions, get support that way. And you're around, you ever been around people that in your life that are just negative, and they don't, even when you're growing and, let's say, losing weight, getting fit, they're not really celebrating you, right? Because unfortunately, some people see that as you distancing yourself from them, and they react negatively to that. And so it's really important to be around other growth seeking individuals, and that's where the Insiders Club is really powerful. And if you are a company, you can go to, also on my website, but shortcut there, emotionallyhealthycompany.com, and you can set up a conversation with me to discuss if we're a good fit to work together.
Awesome. Well, I will have all of those links in my show notes as well. So you can find all that in my show notes also. And Dr. K, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really appreciate it.
I'll just leave you with this. Stop chasing joy. Begin living in wonder. I believe in your greatness.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, Dr. K, for coming on the show. And we will see everyone next week.